Hey, welcome back to another episode of What the Heck is Trevor going to do to his car today? I'm just kidding. What better way to celebrate a bright, warm, sunny, desolate, lonely, quarantine day than to spend a little bit of time with my car. I've had it for 6 months. It's just been through its full first winter. So I'm curious to see how the front trunk components have fared over the winter. So we're going to do a full frontal exposure, tear out the front trunk and show you the components inside. And let's take a look and see how well they've done. Overall, it looks fairly clean, but there are some elements in here that could use a little bit of cleaning up. So first, the diffuser here on top of the radiator has some dirt. I will clean that up. That's not so bad. There's a little bit of dirt here on top. This is an aluminum extrusion. And I can see also some surface corrosion on top of the aluminum. That's normal, not too worried about that. The bolts look like they're in pretty good shape here overall, although some of the electrical components here, especially on the grounding wires, show a little bit of evidence of corrosion. I'll take care of that here in a second. I'll explain to that. Condition of the wiring looks really good. It's interesting that Tesla is using this corrugated stuff on all of their wiring, keeping things nice and clean. This sticker jumped out at me. I thought I'd read it for you because you probably can't see it on camera, but it says 50 kilowatt hour battery pack. This is a long range performance Model 3. That should be labeled 74. It also says rear wheel drive, North America left-hand drive. So anyway, that's been mislabeled. I just thought it was funny. So let's give you a little bit of a general tour of the car so you understand what these components are. The first thing you'll notice here is that this is the 12-volt battery. This controls the electronic components, and it's also responsible for closing the contactors on the main battery pack. There is an inverter on the main battery that's responsible for charging up this battery. This is the one that fails occasionally, and you can't use just any battery. You have to use the one that Tesla supplies or something that's equivalent to it, because you don't need cold cranking amps on a car like that. That's typical ICE car engine batteries. This reservoir here is for your power steering fluid. This reservoir is for your brake fluid. And then over here, of course, you have your filler for windshield wiper fluid. Below the battery, you will find this large assembly. This is known as the super bottle. It's a real marvel of engineering. Without getting into too many details, it actually has a valve on the bottom, and its job is to shunt coolant throughout the power electronics and the motors on the car. On this side of the super bottle is a heat exchanger. Now, a heat exchanger's job is to do exactly what its name implies, and that's to exchange heat between two mediums. In this case, they're using part of the refrigerant coming from the air conditioning pump. That's this device over here that's mounted on shock mounts to run the coolant through there, and through a series of plates, they can actually remove heat through the coolant lines. These are these corrugated pipes here that run through the battery pack and the power electronics. Now, because my car is a dual motor car, there's another motor just below here, and there's another heat exchanger just down here in the bottom. Again, they use part of the coolant from the super bottle to circulate through there, and that actually helps to remove heat from the motors and the oil system. And there's another one on the rear motor on every Model 3 as well. And again, that's used to cool the oil running through the motors. Here below this black plastic plate is, again, I mentioned the radiator for the air conditioning system in the car. And this is one of the nicest things about Tesla is their packaging, how they actually structure the components to do various functions in the car in such an efficient manner so you end up with a front trunk. Not a lot of wasted space here. Overall, I'm very happy with the cleanliness of how things have fared over the winter. I'm going to take a few moments here and just clean this up a little bit. I just use spray 9. In this case, actually, it's simple green diluted with some water, about 50-50. Not too strong, but just enough to keep things cleaned up. Again, we'll deal with some of the bolt corrosion here in just a moment. I just like to wipe things down, just keeps things nice and clean. Now, we know that electric cars don't need that much maintenance, which is true. However, I am a believer in preventative maintenance. And if you've been a long-time follower on my channel, you'll know that when I had my Model X, every spring I would take out the front trunk and just do a little mini exploration to make sure that all the components were looking good, that there was no undue corrosion in place, and actually treat some of those problem areas before actually things got really too bad. The process of removing the trunk on the Model 3 is actually quite easy. There's only something like half a dozen bolts. It's all 10 millimeter. They're all the same size, which is also quite nice. And over here in the corner, you can't see it, but there's little rocks and stuff from road debris. They put dirt and grime on the roads here in the winter months. Sometimes it has a tendency to collect in these little areas when you just take them out. If I had more time, what I should be doing is actually pulling off the belly pan on the front and the back of the car. I hear that those areas get quite a bit of buildup in the winter months, but I'm not prepared to put my car in a lift at this moment. So let's talk a little bit about corrosion prevention. Now, the product I'm going to be using is this. It's called fluid film. You can pick it up at most automotive places. And I've used this in the past on the Model X, and it does a wonderful job of coating areas like some of these bolts in here. So some of these grounding points have a little bit of corrosion on there. And it's almost like an undercoating for a car, even though I have not undercoated my car. This is perfectly safe to do, so, you know, I know some of you are going to go straight to the comments and say stuff like, oh, you're going to ruin your warranty. No, that has nothing to do with that. This is perfectly safe to do. And if you ever have to have your car serviced, whatever, I'm sure some of the Tesla service people will certainly appreciate not having to strip any bolts having to do with corrosion if they ever have to take these bolts out. You know, these areas here where there's grounding, dissimilar metals, I think. Not too sure. I want to make it perfectly clear that I'm not actually advocating that you do this. This is something that I do to my cars to do a little bit of preventative maintenance. This is not an endorsement for the product or the process, but I just feel that doing this helps with keeping corrosion down. It's very similar to people asking me if they should undercoat their cars. Again, that's up to you. I'm not actually undercoating my car. Tesla is actually okay if you undercoat your cars, as long as the undercoating people don't do any kind of piercing in the metal, because to do that would potentially introduce corrosion into those dissimilar metal areas. But otherwise, it's up to you if you want to do that. And of course, while you're at it, if you're in here, it's a good opportunity to do things like do a little bit of lubrication on some parts that move, such as, you know, the hinges and like. And one area that could really benefit from some lubrication, of course, is the front trunk latch. So spraying this liberally, it's actually a pretty good idea. Just using a little bit of WD-40, a little bit on the spring. Just wipe off any excess. While you have the frunk open, it's a good opportunity to take a little time and double check all of your connectors, little wires, make sure that there's nothing broken. The clips that hold in the wires are secured, and make sure there's nothing broken that ways. And then you have your windshield wiper tube that goes in here. Make sure that the Y connector is in place. The other thing too is these little body clips that are in the side. This holds the front trunk in. They're notorious for breaking. Good thing is you can buy these from Tesla service. They're not too expensive, so double check those while you're in here. Well, there you have it, some of the basic preventive maintenance things that I like to do to my Tesla every spring to protect my lovely car. If you find the video informative, give it a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe. We'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching.